Greetings from Pavlo Ardanov, postdoctoral researcher at the University of Rio Negro and co-founder of the NGO Permaculture in Ukraine. This is video instruction to polyculture design tool for vegetables, leafy greens, and spice and aromatic crops that utilizes information from crop databases, literature review, and from a survey of growers. This is test version of a tool which is composed of 10 Google spreadsheets. We recommend you to sign to your Google account in order to be able to utilize action buttons. On the first spreadsheet, you need to check session status. If it is session finished, you can start your own session by changing status to session started from a drop-down menu. Your session is stored until you mark that you finished session or up to 5 days. So you can continue your design over several days. There are 5 copies of design tool for parallel sessions. We will create them and provide links after initial trial periods and error check. All spreadsheets store information from previous sessions, so you need first to clear input of a previous user by pressing a red button. You may be prompted to authorize script. Detailed instruction is provided in the first row, highlighted yellow. Note that top rows and left columns might be frozen. In order to see the upper rows and left columns, you need to place a cursor into the upper left cells and move it down and right with arrow keys. Start your design by selecting up to 10 cache crops that will be the focus for assembling your polycultures. Later on, the tool will group your cache crops and selected companions by their environmental requirements. So at this point, you can select a whole range of desired crops irrespective of their cultivation requirements. Known companions of selected crops are displayed in the next column. Crops with detailed descriptions available in our database are highlighted green. Companions are ordered by the number of associations with your cache crops. For example, onion can be the companion of arugula and celery, and tomato is known companion of basil and celery. Now tick boxes for all companion crops which you would be potentially interested to grow. During subsequent design steps, you can decide which of them to include into your final polycultures. You can click the link and open another sheet to review known compatible and incompatible crops. All design spreadsheets have the main design sheets and sheets with extra information. You can copy sheet links, paste it into your browser, drag it to open new browser window, and display your main design sheet and any additional sheets side by side for easier navigation, if you wish. Or you can always press a link to return to a master sheet in the same browser window. At the end of each sheet, there is a yellow field for your notes if you spotted any errors on current sheet. From this first design spreadsheet, you can continue to the next spreadsheet to review and, if necessary, correct crop environmental requirements, or skip to the next step and proceed to crop zonal arrangement. Or you can simply learn about known companions and finish using tool at this point. Don't forget to finalize your session in this case. Please wait until the next spreadsheet loads completely and finalizes initial calculations. At this point, green progress bar disappears in the upper right corner. When you update information, spreadsheet performs additional calculations. Please wait till it finishes all the computations before moving to the next spreadsheet. The speed of calculations depends on processing power of your computer, and it takes more time for subsequent spreadsheets which processes progressively more information. In the second spreadsheet, you review environmental requirements of selected crops and selected companions. As always, start from clearing inputs from previous users. Different databases may report different values for certain crops. Such crops are highlighted green as arugula here, which is reported as crops for both moist and well-drained soils by one database, but as a crop for moderate and dry soil by another database. The tool automatically calculates the most popular options. In addition, you can report yourself respective trait values. Your corrections are very useful to improve tool performance for subsequent users. In this sheet, you review crop water, nutrient, and soil requirements. And two more sheets are included to review light requirements and tolerances if you design your polycultures for that specific conditions. In the next spreadsheet, you establish your initial polycultures by grouping selected cash crops and selected companions into so-called zones with defined soil, light, and stressors environmental conditions. You can define any number of conditions for 1 and up to 5 different zones. For each individual environmental condition that you define in each zone, you can see the number of previously selected crops which meet these conditions. To see a longer crop list, you can select respective cells and press See Crops button, or you can open a crop list in a separate tab. Resulting lists for each zone are composed from those crops which you selected earlier and that meets all defined conditions. Press Update Crop List after selecting all sets of environmental criteria. You can manually copy columns highlighted yellow to adjoining right columns with drop-down crop lists. You may select less stringent environmental criteria to include more crops into your polycultures. Separate columns list those previously selected crops which does not meet your defined environmental criteria. You can return to the previous sheet and review environmental requirements for these crops. Or you can manually include them into designed polycultures by selecting from drop-down lists. Similarly, you can exclude any crops from any polycultures. Next to crop lists for each polyculture, you can also see known companions which were not automatically included because they don't meet environmental criteria that you defined. Again, you can manually include any of them from drop-down lists based on your experience. Non-incompatible crops are also visualized, and by default they are excluded from your polycultures unless you manually select them from drop-down lists to keep them into respective polyculture. You can see detailed notes on crop incompatibility in a separate sheet. In this spreadsheet, you review and correct information about plant architecture, root system type and depth, plant habitus, height and width, growth rate, lifespan, and growing season. If the length of description text exceeds cell length, click button to read description. You may click respective button to prefill miscellaneous crop reports with most popular options, which you can also correct manually. And you can provide data for crops where information is absent by selecting proper options from drop-down lists. From this sheet, you can take shortcuts and go straight to peer suggestions and integration of spice and aromatic crops into your polycultures. Or you can continue to the following spreadsheet to review crop nutrient requirements. Spreadsheet on nutrient cycling does not require users' input, as it only represents information on your selected crops which is available in our databases. Here you can read which of your selected crops are nitrogen fixers, accumulators of micro and micro elements, ground covers and mulch makers. You can also see microbial associates of your crops. Separate sheet with detailed descriptions of some of these functions is available, where you can also provide feedback or correct information on individual crops. The sheet on pest and disease resistance also require no user input. Here you can read information about crop susceptibility to pests, their biocidal properties and production of potentially biocidal compounds, as well as information on attraction of pest predators and pollinators. A sheet with detailed description of some of these functions is also available. In the next sheet, you can read about weed potential of selected crops and about different traits linked to seed dispersal and to vegetative reproduction, which might be linked to weed potential. This might be relevant in establishing rotations, where previous crop can potentially weed the following crop. Wherever miscellaneous reports are available, you can pre-fill drop-down lists with the most popular options, manually correct it, and supply information for crops where reports are not available. Another section is dedicated to intercropping considerations such as allelopathy and phytosocial groups. The final section refers to crop integration with livestock. You can complement your polycultures with crops compatible to your earlier selected crops as reported by other growers, namely German farmers practicing community-supported agriculture who participated in our survey. Left column of this sheet reminds you environmental requirements of your polycultures. In this example, we work with single polyculture. And when you click the link to see possible crop integration in space and time, there will be another link to see initial crop lists of your polycultures before this design step. You can see what crop combinations with your selected crops were reported by another growers, and how these growers combined crops in space and time. Scroll right to see descriptions of different modes of crop combinations. Return to main design sheet and tick those crops which you want to include into respective polyculture. The next section refers to integration of spice and aromatic crops into your polycultures, which can serve for growth promotion, pest and weed suppression. These data are taken from systematic review of academic literature. First part lists all crops that have been reported as associates to your polyculture components. You can read notes on separate spreadsheet as well as more detailed information, including the mode and mechanism of interaction and the size of effect. Please select from drop-down list what sort of description you want to display, on all associates or on control of selected pests, weeds or attracting pest predators. Tick boxes to include desired spice and aromatic crops into specific polyculture. Next part allows you to include companion crops of spices which you added to your polyculture in a previous step. Here again you can review notes and tick boxes to include desired companion crops into specific polyculture. In the next third part, you can enhance specific functions with extra spice and aromatic crops, pest control, attracting pest predators, and weed control. The structure is similar. You should first select pests, biocontrol organisms, or weed of particular concern. A section on pests lists pests of selected crops where reports on spice and aromatic crops for controlling these pests are available. Each section contains the link to notes. Our algorithm is not always capable to retrieve notes. Then you can follow the link to open complete literature review and manually search reports on specific pests and weed species in a respective sheet or a column. You can drag and resize formula bar box to conveniently display whole note or just copy-paste note into external document. After listing all pests or weeds of concern, press Prefill drop-down list button to retrieve the list of spice and aromatic crops in each section. It is again a drop-down list and you can include any extra spice and aromatic crops based on your survey of literature review sheet. Then, similarly to previous section, you need to tick boxes for desired spice and aromatic crops next to polyculture where you want to include these crops. A final section allows you to review and exclude any crops which are reported as incompatible to your recently included polyculture components. Incompatible crops are excluded from your polycultures by default, and you need to select them from the drop-down list of each polyculture if you want to keep them based on your knowledge and experience. There is a separate tab where you can see crop lists after each step for your convenience. The next step is a service step, which is used to update calculations for the next step based on your input in the previous step. Open this spreadsheet and wait till it completely finishes all the calculations indicated by disappearance of a green progress bar in the top right corner. This step takes a while, depending on processing power of your computer, and green bar will appear and disappear multiple times. When it completely disappears, click the link to process to step 9. The last two steps are time demanding as more calculations are involved. During step 9, you can review if any of the currently added crops are not matching environmental requirements that you defined for your polycultures. First, as always, you need to clear inputs from previous user. Then click button Update Crop List and wait till script will update spreadsheet data. Spreadsheet displays incompatibles only for defined environmental criteria. NA means that information is not available in our database and you can manually supplement it from a drop-down list to improve this tool for the subsequent users. As well as you can correct any false information on environmental requirements. If any crops are defined as incompatible by one or several environmental criteria, which also includes NA boxes, you need to manually tick all checkboxes in the rows for those crops which you want to keep in your polycultures. There are 5 sheets for separate polycultures if you are designing several at a time. After reviewing information for all your polycultures, proceed to the final step. On the last step, you can increase complementarity of resource use in your polycultures. Start from pressing clear inputs and wait till crop list will reset and get updated. There are 5 different tabs for optimizing complementarity in each polyculture. Crop list is red and companions of selected crops highlighted green. Red numbers relate to crop list in red and indicate the number of crops having individual traits. 3 columns on the right from each column with numbers lists are the crops from our database which have indicated trait value. To improve resource use efficiency, the main strategy is to optimize trait diversity within the polyculture, such as root depth and nutrient assimilation capacities. However, for some traits, such as association with mycorrhizal fungi and fungal bacteria ratio, you would rather want to increase similarity between your polyculture components. Right column next to each crop column lists crop environmental requirements, namely those criteria which you earlier indicated for your polycultures. You can press button to visualize environmental criteria for the crops of interest in a drop-down window. You shall optimize complementarity step by step by selecting functions in order of importance that you define for yourself. Click one of 4 categories listed in the first column: plant architecture, nutrient cycling, pest resistance, or companion cropping and integration with livestock. If you have few crops under any category or group, you may want to increase the number of crops in this category. Try prioritizing crops highlighted green, which are the companions. Review if environmental requirements are compatible with your conditions and tick boxes next to desired crops. Updated crop list is displayed in gray at the bottom of the first column. After finishing with optimizing each function, Copy this updated crop list to the cell B5. You can do this either manually or by pressing the button Update Crop List. After this step, you need to remove all checkboxes to continue with a subsequent optimization cycle. Again, you can do this either manually or by pressing button Clear Checkboxes. Wait till spreadsheet update companion list, which might take a while, and continue with optimization of another trait group until you're satisfied with the result. Each time you add new crops, you get new picture of trait distribution for all traits. Process of optimizing crop complementarity requires a lot of time and computations. Therefore, we suggest to focus only on those traits which are the most important for you in each polyculture. At the end or after each step, you can review non-incompatible crops. They are listed at the end of each spreadsheet. Incompatible crops are excluded by default unless you tick checkbox to keep it in your polyculture. At the end of optimization process for each polyculture, or at any time, you can click link to read detailed notes on selected crops, namely information about companions and incompatibles, cultivation, uses, and concerns. After you finish trait optimization with all your polycultures, you may click link to open summary in a new sheet. You can print resulting crop list or save it in a PDF format. At the end of your work with the tool, you need to follow the link to return to the first spreadsheet and to finish your session by selecting respective option from the drop-down list. We would appreciate if you share your experience with crop polyculture for improving this tool. Open survey by clicking link which is available on the summary page or on the first page of design spreadsheet. Wait till this spreadsheet opens and resets data from the previous respondent. Select Start Survey from the drop-down list in the first column. Select your crops from the drop-down list or type if not available. Report all polyculture arrangements in space and times for your crops. Next arrangement choice is available in all crop lists to report and separate several crops arrangements of a particular type. Connectors are available to specify details of crop arrangements, and comment fields is present for any extra notes. Indicate your country, your willingness to be contacted by other growers who want to learn more about your experience, as well as your willingness to participate in a citizen science trials to test performance of crop polycultures with your peer growers under different environmental conditions. Finally, select Finish and Submit and close this spreadsheet to record your responses. We hope that this tool will help you to make informed decisions on designing your polycultures, and we would be happy for your help on improving this tool as well as on developing polyculture recommendations for other growers.